good afternoon friends. Welcome to the CEC-UGC live lecture. Dear friends, since our previous 5 sessions we have been talking on understanding postmodernism. Today also we would be talking on postmodernism and we would be talking on another new perspective. This is the 6th lecture in the series, and for this discussion we have once again with us in our studios Dr. Ajay Verma. Dr. Ajay Verma is Associate Professor in Center of Philosophy, School of Social Sciences, JNU. So let's welcome Dr. Ajay Verma and let's understand postmodernism. Hello sir, welcome to the lecture.
Thank you. Hello viewers. So we have been already talking about different aspects of postmodernism. So in our 5 previous lectures, we had a look at how what exactly we mean by modernism, and what kind of ideas emerged during the process of modernity, and how how modern. I mean, what are the significant features of modernism which distinguish it from the earlier times, and we also saw how different domains of knowledge, witnessed some significant changes, some significant transformations about some of their foundational beliefs, some of their fundamental presuppositions, which includes the notions about knowledge, notions about metaphysics, notions about the idea of consciousness, the notion regarding order of things generally, and so on and so forth. That also includes there are notions regarding morality. So in that series, we'll be further looking at some of the main thinkers who in a big way influenced what we today know as postmodernism. So until now, we in a certain way have been looking at what kind of transformations were happening in different areas, in different domains of knowledge, in different branches of philosophy, so to speak, after the 2 world wars, and as we saw that these world wars were some of the events which jolted the consciousness of the entire masses living across different continents. And it involved everybody, all human beings, into a certain chain of events which were sort of far from desirable, and resulted in sort of huge amount of loss of every kind, but most significantly the loss of absolutely huge number of lives. So after that, as we've been looking at things, how sort of certain transformations started occurring, how we started. So how certain kind of disbeliefs, certain kind of skepticism arose regarding the kind of future we were looking for ourselves. There kind of a need was felt to redefine what we call as knowledge. There was a need to redefine our ideas regarding what constitutes truth, and so on and so forth. But as a matter of fact, the very term postmodernism sort of comes into use, comes into origin much later, almost 2 decades later on, after the Second World War. But certain processes towards that, towards a particular event, from where this term postmodernism became one of the key terms in all the different areas of study. The different processes, different transformations, which lead to ultimately that kind of a notion of knowledge and so on were already happening. But we have already looked at that. I mean, how Nietzsche presents certain kind of skepticism, incredulity towards what philosophers have been kind of talking about in the name of objective truth and so on and so forth, but the very term postmodernism is not used by any of these earlier thinkers, which includes significant contributions from, say, for example, Freud in the area of consciousness, as we have already talked about it. In the area of consciousness, the earlier notion was that consciousness, is a kind of self-transparent arena, a self-transparent space, and whatever is there in the consciousness, sort of gets imbued with certain kind of, it gets imbued with awareness. So there could be no sort of nothing outside the domain of there couldn't be anything lying in the area of within the area of consciousness which is not known to it. But we saw that Freud presents present ideas which were absolutely contrary to such kind of earlier belief. So these different sort of transformations, these different challenges, to some of the earlier notions regarding consciousness, knowledge, morality, and so on and so forth, were already happening for a pretty long time. So ever since the beginning of 20th century until sort of the mid 20th century. But it is not until one of the main thinker whose name is associated with postmodernism. It's not until François Lyotard that the term postmodernism actually takes a significant shape. And then becomes becomes a key term for almost all different disciplines of inquiry. So there are three main thinkers who have been closely associated with the rise of a particular set of ideas that we call postmodern, and these three main thinkers are François Lyotard, Jean-François Lyotard. His significant work amongst he wrote obviously several books, but the most significant one from the point of view of postmodernism is considered to be The Postmodern Condition: A Report on Knowledge. Second in the line is Frederick Jameson, who wrote a very significant work titled Postmodernism, or the Cultural Logic of Elite Capitalism. And third in the line is Jean Baudrillard, who wrote, among several other works, he wrote even on Gulf War, but his most significant contribution to the area of postmodernism is his celebrated work titled Simulacra and Simulation. So in this lecture, we'll try and look at these three thinkers, and we'll try to see what significant contributions these thinkers made in the area of giving a proper shape and definition to the very idea of postmodernism. So first in the line, we'll talk about Lyotard. Lyotard gives a certain kind of definition of postmodernism, which stays with us until today. And Lyotard defines postmodernism as what he calls incredulity towards meta-narratives. But before we really understand what he means by incredulity or skepticism towards meta-narrative, we'll have to first understand what exactly do we mean by meta-narratives. But even before we talk about meta-narratives, we'll have to first understand what is meant by narratives, and and how the narrative accounts are different from a different category of accounts of knowledge, as compared to some of the other kinds of knowledge. So first of all, we'll have to look at what exactly do we mean by narratives. So, narratives, to understand it in a very broad, general way, are certain kind of stories, explanations, which in a certain way do not require kind of authority from anywhere outside of themselves. So that means to say that their legitimacy, so to speak, doesn't come from anywhere outside of themselves. And their legitimacy, so to speak, is is carried, is something that is intrinsic to them, and they kind of form certain kind of unitary explanations which are in a certain way self-complete. So these are some kind of explanations. These could be stories, these could be myths, these could be some kind of symbols, rituals, or whatever. So, but especially narrative, basically means some kind of stories, which have which carry value for us, in different ways. So, say for example, there could be certain stories. Say for example, in certain kind of people, living elsewhere, certain tribes maybe, there may be certain ways of understanding so the order in the world, or they say, for example, they may have a story for how the world may have originated in the first place. So they may have certain beliefs, like say for example, that the entire earth is basically balanced on the top of a turtle. They may have certain kind of belief, like earth and moon are related as kind of blood relations in a certain way, and so on and so forth. Or somebody could be some god may be viewed as the father of Earth and other planets, and so on and so forth. There could be any number of there could be any number of stories depending on different cultures, different kind of people, and so on and so forth. So what we find is that in earlier times, regarding all these different questions that we were concerned with in certain way, say for example, the origin of the universe and so on and so forth, there were stories which carried a kind of legitimacy of their own, which did not depend on any other accounts outside of themselves, any methodologies, any methods outside of themselves, which to which they have to conform to, or in terms of which they'll have to sort of legitimize themselves, and so on and so forth. So there was, so to speak, no sort of nothing kind of sort of legitimized law books vis-a-vis. They'll have to find sort of their own legitimacy. So these narratives were certain accounts which were self-complete, which did not require any legitimacy outside of themselves, which carried their own authority within themselves. And it required having some kind of, subjective understanding of them. It requires certain kind of, letting go of the subject into the story. So the main idea here was that the main idea in narrative is that these stories are come along with certain kind of self-completeness, and do not require any legitimacy apart from engaging the subject, and sort of making the subject lose herself into the interplay of images within themselves. So this is the overall idea behind what we call narratives, which basically means stories, myths, and such and other such accounts. Now, as opposed to that, science, is supposed to have a very different kind of, legitimizing, a different kind of method of legitimization. So, science, radically differs from narratives, as a method and, as a body of knowledge. Because science, doesn't work on merely connotative aspect, of meaning within language. So, for science, language is essentially denotative. Sort of when I sort of utter a word, say for example, earth, there is a particular object that I'm referring to, a particular object which has an independent nature, which has which exists independently of what I may think of that object, and therefore whatever sort of meaning I ascribe to the words that I utter will have to derive meaning in terms of how far they are able to denote or take into account the actual sort of presence of the object concerned, along with this different set of qualities, along with what is its sort of what is its nature, is this self nature, and so on and so forth. So, science, as opposed to narrative accounts, has a particular method, which we call as scientific method, which is objective in a way that it doesn't really matter who is working on that method. The result would invariably be same, because there is a certain kind of objectivity involved in it. So because the idea here is that we'll have to know the truth about the object. So truth basically lies in the object, and in terms of that, the truth of my propositions of what I say will have to be decided. So whereas in narrative accounts, propositions are in a certain way self-sufficient. So propositions, so far as they are making some kind of a sense to the subject, so far as those propositions are found appealing, as a certain kind of explanation of something to the subject, they have they have a legitimacy about themselves, or or sort of so far as those narratives have takers, so far as those narratives come along with a historical authority of their own, that's sufficient for them to stand as explanations of explanations to some significant questions. So this is according to this is the main difference between what we could call narrative accounts and legitimate or explanations about the world. But Lyotard makes a big claim about the sciences. Lyotard says that, as a matter of fact, it'll be good for us to know that Lyotard started writing this work, when he was asked by certain universities in Quebec to write certain kind of sort of a report on the status of science and its research around that time. And he sort of wrote a certain kind of philosophical sort of idea of our notion of knowledge, which had huge implications in different domains of knowledge. So what he had to say about science was that though science, the idea of science and scientific method, sort of arose, as a kind of different kind of methodology, which was free from any external authority, and which was aimed and directed towards the actual truth about the world, which was directed towards knowing the actual nature of things, the actual nature of the world as such. But according to Lyotard, those in the postmodern world, in the world sort of 1960s, like sort of 2 decades later on after the World War, was a very different kind of world, and the idea of science was also changing very fast with the changing events in the world. So he was of the view that science, has stopped now being concerned with so to speak, some kind of original questions, so original questions concerned with pure sciences. Say, for example, the study regarding the origin of the universe, inquiry into what constitutes the truth of the matter. What exactly is the nature of the matter? What is the nature of the minutest of particles that constitute matter, and so on and so forth. So what he sort of tells us about science, as a method, and as a set of as a body of knowledge, is that science, in a certain way, has stopped, bothering itself with these kind of questions. Instead, what we have today is, is that knowledge has been turned into a commodity. So knowledge, in the earlier notion of knowledge as like some kind of a Socratic notion of knowledge, as wisdom, knowledge, as something which is which subjectively transforms you. Knowledge, as when we say that this person is knowledgeable. That meant that this is a person who has knowledge of things, who has engaged with the pursuit of knowledge in a certain subjective way, and in a certain way this has transformed that person, and this person has now become wiser. So as sort of all know about Socrates, he thought that he was one of the most ignorant people in the in Greece. So the idea is that that acknowledging oneself as ignorant, and then trying to gain knowledge, struggling with the certain questions, and letting wisdom transform you in a certain way. So the pursuit of knowledge was supposed to be in a certain way intimately connected, with the growth of the subject, and so on and so forth. But that idea, we find completely gone in the postmodernist scenario. So what Lyotard points out, in his work, regarding that he titles, condition of knowledge, is that Knowledge, is no more concerned with the idea of truth, the idea of transformation, as like subjective transformation, and so on and so forth. Instead, knowledge has become a kind of commodity that you exchange. So the divide between between knowledge and what we used to call information is fast sort of disappearing. Information is useful, is instrumental towards certain kind of gain. It is it is a kind of teleological in nature. It is it doesn't transform the person in so to speak, in an insignificant way. The idea of knowing the truth, which sort of is supposed to transform the person concerned, those ideas are given up. And what we have today, is sort of knowledge generated and stored in computer. But computers work on binary functions. So all languages, he says. All languages, Lyotard points out, now in this new scenario have to be translatable in some way or the other to computer language, so that they could be exchanged over the terminals. So he says, now, when we have given up those sort of earlier notions, where the origin of things mattered, where sort of explanations as approximating towards the actual truth of the matter, those kind of ideas about knowledge are now gone. So instead, what we bother about is how useful a particular piece of information or sort of piece of knowledge is for us. So knowledge becomes sort of, and knowledge similarly would change very fast depending on certain conditions, depending on say for example the condition of the stock market, the kind of the way media is changing, the way of the way the media on which we exchange knowledge, we have an exchange of knowledge is changing. So all these different factors also have an impact on sort of our views regarding knowledge, and how sort of we sort of we have an exchange of knowledge. So he anticipates, as a matter of fact, sort of more than half a century back, that there would be like time when knowledge basically would be nothing more than a commodity, and sort of more knowledge of things you have in a certain way more powerful you would be, more knowledge you have, more domination you may have on people, on sort of other nations, and so on and so forth. So knowledge here would mean, say for example, knowing what people want. And if you have that knowledge, it could have huge implications for marketing your product. So knowledge, like all other things in the industrialized world, becomes yet another product to be exchanged, sold over the portals. So we'll talk more about this in a short while. Thank you. Welcome back, viewers. So we were talking about Lyotard, who was among the first line of thinkers who introduced the term postmodernism, and we were trying to look at how he defines how he defines postmodernism. And we were trying to look at how, according to him, the very notion or the idea of knowledge has undergone a huge transformation of meaning in after 1960, when he's writing a report on knowledge. So we were talking about how science was sort of as a methodology, as a body of knowledge, started as something which is a different way of explaining things. It was a way of explaining things which was different from narratives, but according to Lyotard, in the new scenario, postmodern scenario, science itself stops bothering about certain fundamental questions that earlier it held as very important. So the idea of certainty, the idea of decidability of truth becomes so to speak a passe, and especially it happens especially after the idea of quantum physics, the idea of quantum mechanics, the idea of uncertainty, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So after that, in any case, even if science were to really bother about the actual truth of the matter, so to speak, now these new findings had already started suggesting us that there is no ultimately decidable kind of truth about even the physical world. So that in a certain way delegitimized the very idea of certainty and truth in science. So then what is then what would science engage with given this vacuum regarding so to speak the truth of the matter? So, in answer to this, Lyotard says that science now, is concerned more with, so to speak, workability of things. So, science, wants to be science now in a new scenario is concerned with what works best. So it researches, it sort of encourages research in a certain area where more of that kind of research could be produced, where there is a scope of going on in that particular area. So truth, the idea of truth, so to speak, becomes replaced by what could be probably called performativity. So what actually sort of performs well for us. So any idea which works, any idea which sort of which could be marketable, which could have its value in terms of production of things, in terms of marketability of a particular product, catering to needs of a particular situation, or for that matter even creating needs. So such so the science becomes again it loses its value as a different kind of legitimizing process. So which worked on the idea of objective truth and so on and so forth. So ultimately, what the idea that Lyotard puts before us is that science, like several other narratives that we earlier spoke about, becomes one of the sort of one of those narratives, albeit much more powerful in nature, which was able to replace several other smaller discourses, smaller narratives that actually earlier existed. So the idea here was that in what we could call during the period of modernization, during the period of when certain modernist ideas dominated, what was happening was that we were celebrating the idea of science as something that would completely replace ignorance, which was signified by certain kind of narratives which could not be legitimized on the basis of new legitimizing process methods that we came up with after the emergence of scientific method. So now what Lyotard says is that in this new kind of a scenario, where science also becomes only concerned with performativity, science itself becomes one of the narratives, albeit a different kind of narrative, which he calls meta-narrative. So and he compares it with some of the other meta-narratives like Christianity, like Marxism, the French Enlightenment, because the idea of science was also closely interlinked with the idea of political freedom. So as we have already talked about it in our earlier lectures, the idea of scientific method was also included this humanist idea that we are capable of knowing the truth about the world, on the basis of scientific method, and following such kind of scientific method would eventually lead us to freedom for all. And Hegel was one of the champions of this idea. So what happens is that the meta narrative that could be associated with the French Enlightenment, which held the idea of political freedom, liberty, and so on very, very dear to itself. The idea of knowledge and universal enlightenment that Hegel proposed, so to speak, a German kind of idea of enlightenment, that was one of the meta narratives according to Lyotard. And of course Christianity was one meta narrative. So meta narrative basically here means certain grand structures that we thought existed, in history, and through the passage of time, the idea that through the passage of time, actually, we are going somewhere. We are going towards an event which would be marked by liberation for all, which would be marked by freedom for all, and so on and so forth. So these meta narratives, according to Lyotard, which includes dominantly three meta-narratives, including Christianity, including Marxism, which involved an idea that history could be seen as in terms of material and production and so on and so forth, and it would eventually lead, the history is going to take us towards certain kind of class conflict, and eventually to a time when everybody would have equality, and so on and so forth. So Marxism, science, and Christianity are interestingly, these very, very different kind of discourses are clubbed together as meta narratives by Lyotard. And he says that the time when he's writing this report on knowledge, one of the most significant findings according to him, in his report is that the present condition of knowledge is marked. One significant feature of that knowledge is that that there is a certain kind of incredulity towards any of these meta narratives. So people do not want to they are not working with an idea of certain event in time that all of us are gradually leading towards, following a particular kind of method. So that idea of the movement of freedom, removed from us, in a period of time which would be eventually reachable by us. Those kind of narratives, people have become the present sort of scenario of knowledge is marked by a certain kind of skepticism, suspicion, incredulity towards these meta narratives. So and this, according to him, is one of the significant features of knowledge, as sort of we have come to know. The way the idea of knowledge has transformed through several decades after modernism, and but this is about one of his more significant works regarding postmodernism. But apart from that, he also, very significantly wrote about, language and dreams. One famous psychologist of that time, Lacan, Jacques Lacan, believed that even in dreams, dreams also arise from, dreams after all have a language, according to him. So just like, there's a particular kind of a structure that is, followed by us when we speak, when we when we have linguistic communications. So similarly, dreams also have a language, but this kind of idea is kind of challenged by Lyotard in one of his works, and he says that there's hardly any structure to our unconscious part of our consciousness. And since there's no language, it's completely fragmented. It is it works at a different level altogether. It's very difficult to bind it together into a unity, to have some kind of unitary understanding of it. Such ideas and dreams are, after all, according to him, images which are completely fragmentary, which do not in a certain way come together, to form particular wholes, or even if at all, there's some kind of an understanding there, then it's not based on some kind of organic unity between among those different images. Now, this idea of fragmentation and the manipulation of unconscious mind and images, floating images, as constituting the fragmentary nature of what constitutes reality for us. These are certain notions which are exploited by the next two thinkers that we will be talking about. One of them is Frederick Jameson, and the other is Baudrillard. Now, Frederick Jameson, significantly points out that postmodernism is not, first of all, post-industrialism. And he looks at the different phases in capitalism arising from industrialization. First, he calls market capital, where so this kind of capitalism, in this kind of capitalism, the market, the capital is lies in a particular nation where the things are being produced and consumed. So this is the earlier notion of the capitalism where things are produced within a particular nation and capital is created within that nation. As opposed to that, monopoly capitalism is an era in capitalism where where sort of things, even if they're being produced in a particular nation, the parts are being taken from across the globe, wherever they are cheap. There is more sort of exchange happening across the borders in terms of material required for production and for the product as such. But more importantly, he talks about late capitalism, which according to him, is marked by multinational corporations, assuming the role of some kind of what you could say transnational, states in a certain way, which who sort of don't fall shy of sort of invading the nature, who don't look at nature as something sort of as a unit in itself, as something kind of a self-sustaining unit. They just look at it as sort of one point in the whole chain of production, and they view nature as as a point of sort of origin of their raw material. So late capitalism, according to them, is marked by weakening of the state and rising political influence of multinational corporations, which sort of assume transnational identity, and which come to have huge influence in terms of capital, invasion of nature, and also very importantly sort of invading the unconscious, invading the subconscious of individuals on the basis of advertising. We have already talked a lot about advertising and psychology, and we talked about Freud in some of our earlier lectures. We talked about how one of the nephews of Freud, Edward Bernays, started this whole idea of public relations, and he sort of discovered, he devised ways of how to influence large masses, how to invade into their subconscious parts of their mind in order to create a market for some kind of products. So these are some of the main features, according to him, of late capitalism. But at the same time, he points out, Jameson is very much influenced by Marxist ideas, and he says that just like Marx said that everything like culture and so on and so forth could be understood only if we understand the underlying grammar behind it, which and that grammar is always the sort of grammar of economic economics, or the grammar of production, how the production and the ownership of goods and so on and so forth. So on the same along the same line, Frederick Jameson wants to look at how what is the cultural logic, so to speak, behind late capitalism, which is also the title of his book. So it says that postmodernism is not equivalent of post-industrialization. So when we say that we are living in a postmodernist world, it does not mean that we are living in post-industrial society. Postmodern world is still working as influenced by the cultural logic that is driving the industrialization process in that period. So he points out that in earlier times an object basically was viewed in terms of economy was viewed as something of use. We would look at the object in terms of how it could be useful to us, what need of ours it caters to. So say for example a bag, or say for example a piece of cloth. The need that it serves is to to prevent me from the extremes of elements around me, the weather conditions around me, and so on and so forth. So, but now, that idea of our connecting with the object in terms of need is long gone. So now, things, represent images. So even, the real things are actually no more but come across to us as a set of whole different things constituting a system, in itself. So, say for example, for a particular person who lives in a particular hierarchy within the industrialized society, for him or her, a shirt may mean something to prevent you from getting cold, and so on and so forth. But for a different person, a shirt could mean some kind of a brand. So like same shirt which you could if we were to prevent ourselves from cold, then any shirt would do. But if you're talking about a brand, then you're no more talking about a particular sort of need of yours. You're not talking about the use of the shirt. You're talking about a particular image that is associated with that shirt, and the fact that it's so expensive that not everybody can buy it, makes that shirt a class of its own, because not everybody can buy it. So as a matter of fact, this example could be there could be other examples which could be understood even which would explain things even better. Say for example, bags. A bag, there are particular brands which sell particular kinds of bags running into crores of rupees. So the idea is that that idea of use and connecting us with the object is long gone, and now we work within the system of representations, and everything in this industrial, post-industrial, so in this industrial society is looked at as product, which includes even our character. So our character, say for example, if you go to a bank and are looking for loan. So earlier, your eligibility for loan was decided by what kind of character you have as a person. Do you fulfill your promises? Are you too much of an indulgent person who cares only about his or her own pleasure and doesn't care about others? So that was a part of your trustworthiness. The kind of person you are would decide your trustworthiness for the lender. But now, your trustworthiness has become a product. It's decided, say for example, by your CIBIL account. So your trustworthiness as a person who could be given a certain amount of loan, it is decided by a certain set of images on the computer. So that is going to decide whether you are a person who is good enough to be given a loan, and so on and so forth. So, according to Frederick Jameson, things, the reality has been replaced by images, and images now decide about certain significant things about reality. Now, this idea is taken even further from here and used even more significantly by Jean Baudrillard. Jean Baudrillard, in his famous work called Simulacra and Simulation, talks about different phases that we find vis-a-vis the distinction between the reality and the images. So, first of all, if we talk about Baudrillard, we'll have to first understand what he means by simulacra. Simulacra is basically a term used for image, which basically means image, and the singular of which is simulacrum. So, earlier, if you look at Plato's philosophy, things that we find in the world are images, or imperfect images, or imperfect copies of something that he calls idea, which or the world of forms, which are beyond space and time, and which provide meaning to this world of change around us. So so this idea of copies, and what they are copies of, in the sense that, like, original, this difference had a huge significance for us, in terms of for all philosophical purposes and so on and so forth. So Baudrillard points out that earlier systems, some of the earlier systems were composed by this idea that there is there is a certain kind of a reality to things. There is a certain source from where this reality kind of comes from. So, say for example, in terms of divinity, so the power of the king, what makes the king what he is, what makes the queen what she is. The origin of all that is supposed to be divinity. So, divinity imbues things with the kind of reality that, that those objects, those people have. So, there's a point of origin of things, and which imbues things with reality. As opposed to that, he talks about later modernist era where this sharp distinction between original and copy is lost. So now in the era of in the time of mass production, you could have copies and copies of copies and copies of copies and so on and so forth. So say for example, say for example, now we all can have replicas of Raja Ravi Verma's paintings in our living area. So and then they look kind of so real that nobody really bothers about the original painting. So the idea here is that, and say for example, books, you could have copies and copies and copies of them and so on and so forth. Nobody really bothers about the manuscript and so on and so forth. So, but Baudrillard doesn't stop here. He talks about the postmodernist scenario where even the thought of the original is completely given up. So he says now in the postmodernist times, we don't even care about the original at all. So there was a time when there was supposed to be an origin of things, from where the reality kind of as if flew, came down to other things. Then copies and mass production of copies, and now in postmodernist era, only copies and nothing else. And not only that, copies create systems of their own, like like TV monitor, where certain kind of cultural are created and replicated in soaps and so on so forth, which start constituting reality for us, and which we start following in our daily lives, in our lived scenario. So complete loss of originals and complete takeover by the copies, which he calls creating hyper reality. So friends, this is all we have time for today, and we looked at today the three main significant thinkers of postmodernist times. We will talk more about this in our lectures to come. Thank you.
With this note, thank you, sir. Thank you so very much for giving us a very, very precious session. Dear friends, we would be meeting again soon. Till then, take care. Goodbye.